Om Sahanā-Vavatu, Sahanā-Bhunaktu, Saha Vīryam Karavā-vahai, Tejas Vinā Vadhīta Mastu, Vidvishā-Vahai. Om Shānti, Shānti, Shāntihi. And below Satguru Shivananda Maharaj Ki, for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Jai Hari Om Tat Sat. Okay, we'll continue the exploration of mind, and really this has been focusing on what are the aspects, how do they look, what are the difficulties that we encounter with them, what are the opportunities with them, and how to manage them. So this morning is manas, and tomorrow morning will be the last on this particular series, and we'll do a quick recap as well tomorrow morning. So, function of manas. So again, manas, we've been looking at maha, the four functions of mind. The most subtle is ego. Next most subtle, chitta. And then the buddhi, which is the rationating faculty, really where the intelligence, the borrowed intelligence resides, is within the buddhi. That's the instrument to work things out, finally. And within the buddhi, within the intellect, we're dealing with both the choices related to what is beneficial and what is not beneficial, and the path of freedom, which are interrelated. The working out what's not beneficial, what is beneficial, and directing or guiding one's life in the beneficial way, in the beneficial path, leads to purification of the intellect. And the other work that we're doing as well leads to purification of the intellect. And it requires the pure intellect in order to sort out the reality. Okay, function of manas. The function of manas, which everybody calls the mind, is sankalpa and vikalpa, will and doubt. He's not just talking about the yogis calling it that, but when we say my mind is troubling me, something like this, then this is what we're talking about. Will and doubt, sankalpa, vikalpa, and different definitions to that. So, but we'll read and then we can pick up some of the others. The manifestation of manas is perceived through thoughts. The thoughts that come to you are created by your own manas. Do you have thoughts coming to you, Brett?
Yes.
Okay. Oh. So this is what you're created by your own manas. Whenever you think, you are using your manas, just as when you write, you are using a hand, a pen, and paper. When these three things come together, then writing can be created. The hand, the pen, and the paper, when they come together, writing is created. In the same manner, thoughts are created continuously within manas. Manas is actively connected with the senses. You catch that? Sense object, thought. Okay. Ego, chitta, and buddhi are not actively connected with the senses, but manas is. See if you can catch that. Ego is on its own, as it were, infiltrating everything, irrespective of the senses. When you're in your own imaginary world, ego's still there. And then chitta, the memories, not actively connected, or buddhi. Everything you see will create a thought. Everything that you touch will be known by manas. Everything that you feel, heat, cold, heaviness, or lightness, is perceived by manas. Manas is integrated with the senses, and each sense creates a thought, which can be clear or confused. Does that make sense? Hari?
So when we're saying each sense creates a thought, it's in the subconscious mind?
Manas.
Right.
So manas is equated with subconscious mind.
Yes.
But it's not exactly subconscious mind.
Okay.
Manas is manas. Normally we'll equate the two, but here he's describing what manas is. Interesting. So he's saying when that thought arises on contact with the sense organ, with the sense object, that's arising in manas. Manas is creating it, or it's coming through manas.
Okay.
And it can be extremely pure or extremely static, like polluted.
So, well, or little pure, or little... can you see how it can be cloudy or clear? The thought arising?
Mm-hmm. But not every contact arises a thought.
That'll be discussed.
Okay.
There's how do you manage it will be discussed. So, pratyahara is, of course, is one of the ways to manage. So.
Miss, is it somewhat like a filter that can kind of filters in and stores and creates the thoughts?
Well, the storage is chitta.
Right, so it kind of
the memory.
filters it in, either as will or doubt, or clear or cloudy.
Let's read on.
Okay.
Let's read on.
Oh.
Very simple. If you view chitta as a file cabinet, and in the file cabinet are all of the files, meaning all of the memories and all of the impressions, that's in the file cabinet. So I met Bill on such and such a date, and he said this to me, and it was a good experience. So that's in the file cabinet. Okay. Now the senses come into contact with an object that might be Bill. So who's going into the file cabinet? Manas is going into the file cabinet. Huh? And so it does it as if on its own, go into the file cabinet and rifle through and pull the appropriate. And so can you see that there might be clarity in this relationship and in this activity, or there might be dullness or confusion or like that.
Which file to pick up?
Well, and also what it mean, and the imagination takes over, and now you're just randomly going through the file cabinet now. Anything related? Has this ever happened?
Yes. Of course.
And now clarity gone. Any purpose? Any sense of purpose? Gone. Is that making sense? Trying to get it to be practical, what's being shared. So, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So let's say, here's a good one. Let's say that you walk into the shop area and the sense objects are all tossed about in no order whatsoever. Let's just say. And so you walk there and Manas says, this is a mess, I need to clean it up. Is that sankalpa or vikalpa?
Oh, wow.
Sankalpa. It's clear.
Oh, clear.
Duty, action. I should clean it up.
Will and death.
And now let's say you just stay in the mind and think about all of the other times where you should have done that and and what else do you have to do that would be better right now? Because I don't really want to do this. I don't even want to see it. I'd rather be somewhere else. Vikalpa. All the stuff related. Different. Oh, I want to go into a different file cabinet.
Totally, yeah.
Or you see Bill, and now all the stories about Bill and days worth, and Bill's with you for days, your memory of him. And, Okay, let's see where this goes then. When the thought is clear, it's called a sankalpa. Right? I walk into the office. I'll give you an example. I walk into the office. The computer is there. And the thought is, I need to sit at the desk and answer any correspondence. That's a sankalpa.
Very clear.
And it's very clear. Now, and so I walk over, I sit at the desk, and I deal with the correspondence. Right? And I'm bringing will and intention and all of that into the correspondence. And greeting each person that's written something with an intention. Loving intention. And so, and we're certainly, the memory bank is there because there needs to be a memory, ideally, of who this person was and where we talked before and what were we talking about. So Manas will go into the memory bank, into the file cabinet, and pull that information out and bring it forward. And then there wants to be an understanding of the question that they're being asked, that they're asking, right? And so now I'm calling on buddhi. To some extent. More or less, relatively more or less. Does that make sense? Now, if I walk in and I see the computer and the thought comes, I need to sit here and take care of correspondence now. And then another thought comes, but I really don't want to do that right now. I would rather have something to eat. I'm hungry. What is that?
Vikalpa.
That's vikalpa. So I don't really feel like doing this right now. What is that? So that's also, you would call doubt, but that's also vikalpa. I don't feel like doing this right now. I'm tired. I need to rest. Also vikalpa.
Is that bad though?
Is it bad? We're not rating it as good or bad. We're rating this clear or confused.
Because rating it with clear and confused rather than good or bad allows us to work with it as opposed to struggle with it.
So when the mind is a mess, we're a mess. And most of where we'd say my mind is a mess, that's this manas, this sankalpa vikalpa, where there's not clarity. There's not clarity. When there's clarity, you're fine. You're happy. When there's clarity. But when there's not clarity, you're not fine. You can see. Okay. So, is it bad not to have clarity? I would never say that. Is it beneficial to have clarity? Yes. Yes. Okay. Continue. What's that? And you can see it, right? You can see where it's happening. I'm going to go down to Durga Temple right now. I need to go to Durga Temple and do arati. But why do I do arati? What's the sense of it? Sankalpa, vikalpa. You see it? And you've seen it arise too. Yeah. So doubt. In that case, doubt. And by the way, so now what? Now you're just in cloudiness, right? Now you're in a place of indecision, indecisiveness, just cloudiness. So also not good nor bad. It's just what it is. And by the way, that's the place of suffering. That's the place of suffering. When you know what to do and you're able to marshal the resources and do it, no suffering. When you're thinking about the fruit that's going to come from what you're doing, suffering. When you're not thinking about the fruit that's going to come from what you're doing, no suffering. Right? This is all mind stuff. And we can see how it fits together so pervasively. Everything's about the mind stuff.
It's so beneficial to be able to break it down into like little baby steps of how it evolves in order to be able to catch those moments, those
right.
particular moments where it goes unbeneficial.
When we say we want to be happy, just a moment, we say we want to be happy. And of course, when there's not clarity about where happiness is, when there's not understanding about where happiness is, then we're seeking happiness out there under the sway of the ego sense, with fear of death and fear of what? Of my ideas of where happiness is. And the feeling of separation and the feeling of superiority, all of the ego stuff. And so that's all suffering. But when we have clarity about where happiness is, then what do we say we want? What are the conditions of happiness? And the conditions of happiness are to have all of the functions of the mind in a state of clarity, sattva. To have a clear understanding of who I am. Yes. To have a clear goal. To have a clear, clean relationship. That's ego. To have clarity about what's important and beneficial and what's non-important and non-beneficial. Yes? To have a clear memory field where the associations with suffering are no longer there. The associations with pain and all of this are no longer there. So clean up the chitta. And then to keep the manas in a state of clarity, which is not to lose oneself constantly in the state of doubt and all of the rumination that's related to doubt.
So when you're faced with a decision and you have the doubt, are you suggesting that we use willpower and make a decision and don't question yourself, just move on, use your will to
There's a quick check-in. You activate the intelligence and you say, what's beneficial right now? So it's not it's not easy, but it is simple in that way, what's beneficial right now. Finally, Lord Krishna gives this guidance, which is think only of me, devote yourself completely to me, offer all of the fruit and your action to me, and you shall surely have me. And I tell you, that's the magic formula. That's the magic formula to transcend suffering.
And how does this relate to fear? Like if you're paying a bill on the computer and you're afraid, you know it has to be...
If you're thinking of God, there's no fear. It doesn't mean that it changes the situation, but it changes the interior. And the situation is whatever the situation is. You can pay the bill, you can't pay the bill. Why is that bringing fear? That's only because of the identity and the premise that we're working to keep up. I used to face it all the time. You know, I had a big, at a Maserati in a big house, and I never, I was always spending money. I was always spending more money. I was always spending ahead. So I never really had money in the bank like that. Sounds like the 21st century life. And so now, did I need any of that? No. But because I had chosen to have it and chosen to maintain it, then if you look at the state of manas, it was an absolute mess, absolute disaster. And the intellect so completely impure, and the ego very strong. It was all about defending this idea of what I need, which doesn't have anything to do with what I needed. And then in the defense of it, of course, the Lord is always trying to break these walls down so that we can get to the truth of the matter, right? Because this is just a life of suffering. And so whenever you have a setback, that's the Lord saying, come on, wake up, dear, wake up. You have to see if this is really important, what you've built. But you're right, fight or flight is there, it's predominant. Because now you've built something up and you're always on the edge of whether you can sustain it or not. And so there's the constant thought about whether you can sustain it, whether you can make that payment or not. This is all the manas stuff. It's what we're talking about. And could I convince myself, yes, I'll be able to make it? No, because the reality of the situation is that I may not be able to make it. Is it true? Something could happen. And so that's stupid. Why would I even try to convince myself? But that is what people call spiritual practice sometimes, is positive thinking, what we think of as positive thinking, which is just thinking all the good things and thinking that you have infinite prosperity and all the good will come to you and nothing bad will ever happen, and trying to create a bubble and then living in that. But then there's fear of that collapsing. Because something will happen. So, but if you understand what's beneficial and not beneficial, and in developing an understanding of what was beneficial, I said, none of this is beneficial. Service is beneficial. This is what I was shown. Service is beneficial. Thinking of God is beneficial. Serving the Lord is beneficial. None of this is beneficial. And so he set about making it right, getting it in alignment. But that, by the way, even that was sankalpa. A moment of clarity in the mind. Yes? A moment of clarity. And then a doubt arises. No, she says. No, you want me. You've aspired to me for so long, and now you have me. It just takes a little bit of work. And you're loved, it'll be okay. This is the what?
Maya.
Vikalpa. Vikalpa. Catch what we're talking about, yeah. Vikalpa. It's the doubt. The doubting voice, right? But if we're engaging the intellect and we're saying what's beneficial and what's not beneficial, now you have the capacity to make choices. He said early on that mind, when we're in this mind, which is the yes-no, clarity, not clarity. So some inspiration comes. Where's it coming? It's a thought. It's coming as a thought, right? So it's manas. It's coming in manas. Some inspiration comes. I'm going to simplify my life, it says. And then something else says, but you enjoy all of this. Sankalpa vikalpa. This is, yeah, you've worked hard for this. Right? But that is suffering. That is suffering. And people come with these kinds of problems to see Swami, and what we want to hear maybe is, well, think a different way. And the answer will be to think a different way. But you have to simplify your life too. Simplify your life doesn't mean running away from your life. It means getting to the real life. What's important? What's important? What's most important? And these fears and this panic, etc., that I'm dealing with, is it really as a result of defending something that's important and having genuine fear about if someone's going to walk across the country, fear will arise. So why would you do it? That's a good time to ask. Why would you do it? And if you're doing it for some beneficial reason, for some high-minded goal, or to cultivate some virtue, or to embody some virtue, then the fear of death is there. And what will you say? Well, you choose. You choose. That's the intellect. But you might say, well, it's okay. This is worth dying for. But then, and this fear of death is always arising, right? Yeah. And then all of this other stuff, you say, is that worth dying for? And maybe you say, no. And so, in a way, we can say all of this is helping us to get to clarity. Because you can't live with this continuing tossing back and forth. We're not saying doubt is bad. We're saying lack of clarity is not beneficial. And lack of clarity can be resolved by focusing on what's important.
The intellect can look at the doubt and clarify that.
Well, but it has to be cleaned, which means one has to clean up one's life as well in order to... The inner and the outer want to be in alignment. Okay, so we talked about the function, and maybe that's helpful here. Okay, he gives a very good example, and then we'll talk about how to manage it. So if you've heard the story of the archery contest in the epic Mahabharata, maybe you haven't yet. Okay, he's going to tell it. Guru Dronacharya was teaching archery to the Kauravas and the Pandavas. One day, he decided to test them. He placed a clay bird on a high tree branch and told his students that they would have to hit the bird's eye. He called them one by one, told them to string the bow, and then asked, "What do you see?" Some said, "I see the tree." Some said, "I see the tree, the sky, the leaves, my brothers, and the forest." To each of these contestants, Dronacharya said, "Put down your bow and arrow." When it was Arjuna's turn, he replied, "I see the bird's eye." Hearing this, Dronacharya said, "Shoot the arrow," and the arrow hit the bird's eye. It's a story of clarity within the manas, having resolved it.
See nothing but the goals.
See nothing but the goal, yeah. And so you can say that that's intellect, but it's also needs to be the state of manas. So ultimately the doubting faculty is not buried. You can't just stuff it back inside and say, "Shut up." You do have to make friends with your mind. And making friends with your mind, if you want to be a friend of someone, do you do whatever they say?
No.
Thank you. So you have to make friends with your mind. Which means you're going to have to understand your mind and establish a loving relationship. Mother, daughter, father, son relationship.
Yeah.
And then you can work with the doubts. You can overcome the doubts. Overcoming the doubts isn't about hiding from them. It's not about pretending that they're not there. It's also not about following them.
That's it.
Right? It's about recognizing these are doubts, and they're just that, doubts. And so fine, you investigate. You see, is there merit to it? Is there benefit to it? That's with the buddhi. And you see, no, there's no merit to it. A little story on doubt. So, doubt and fear related in this way. We were taking a peace walk in Michigan. There was I've shared this a couple of times. There was a boy with us, 12, 11 or 12, like that. And we were walking. We had started the walk, and there was a water tower very close to the beginning of the walk. And he saw the water tower, and he freaked out. I mean, he didn't, not so badly that he started screaming or something like that, but it wasn't that far away. He had to get away from it. And so we said, what is it? I'm afraid that the water tower might fall on me. Now, where is that? You can see it right now. Where is that? What is it?
Down.
Use the word vikalpa. Very good. That's this vikalpa. Okay. So, and we said, please look at it. Look at that water tower. Look at how it's constructed. And see if there's any weak point in the construction. Is there any rust there? Is there any design defect? Is there anything? And he said, and he looked at it and he said, no. And he said, so is there any possibility of it falling on you? And he said, no. So that's in that moment. And so we went on. I'm just talking about doubt. You can investigate the doubt. You must not follow it, but you can investigate it. And when you investigate it, you can see that it's not to be followed. And you can, what do you do inside? You say, my dear, look at what you're doing here. One of the ways to do it. You're leading me astray. There's no need for this. We will no longer have any fear or doubt about something such as this. Okay. Manas management through pratyahara and dharana we'll read, and this is Hari will relate to this. The methods to manage sankalpa and vikalpa are pratyahara and dharana. These are two techniques from Raja Yoga to manage manas. In the Bhagavad Gita, when Arjuna asks Sri Krishna, how can one control the mind? Sri Krishna replies, by withdrawing the mind just as a tortoise withdraws its limbs within its shell. Now, he's not speaking of here in pratyahara withdrawing from the mind. He's speaking of withdrawing the mind from the sense objects. And so you recognize that as a practice as well. Okay. The example of the tortoise is very apt, for the tortoise withdraws 6 limbs, including the 4 legs, the tail, and the head. You also need to withdraw 6 attributes, the 5 senses and the mind. Not withdraw from the mind, but withdraw the mind itself. So withdraw the senses and withdraw the mind from the senses. Okay.
Swamiji, is that particularly to the manas part of the mind? Or
That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Pratyahara is speaking of. So this is developing detached relationship with the sense objects. Where is the, again, look at manas and what, so everybody has a diet. Everybody's getting their diet, their food from somewhere. Where is manas getting its diet? From the five senses. And as it were, the subtle five senses as well, which are residing in the mind itself. You know what I mean by the subtle five senses?
That's true.
Yeah.
I can't name them.
Well, they're the same senses, but they exist in the mind. You can see it in dreams so easily, because smell and taste and touch and these sensations are still there in the dreams, right? So you can see it there, but also in the mind daydreaming, but also it's just I'm not really. This is all in the mind.
Of course.
So really, the senses are also in the mind. So, but we're working with it wherever we are. Okay, continue. Disconnect the senses. You need to withdraw the senses that are at present connected with objects which create identification with the objective world. So just hear what's being shared. You need to withdraw the senses that are at present connected with objects, which creates identification with the objective world. So, disconnect the senses from objects and draw them in. This is pratyahara. Where to start? So, this is at many different levels. Okay, say wife or husband or child or whatever. Unless you go deep, you don't know what that is. Because you imagine in the Maya, this ego expression, then you think that your wife is a figure, is the skin only. She looks like this, she says this, all of that. But that's the mask, and underlying it is the soul. And so as a result of thinking that she's a certain way, this way, without relating to what's deeper, then we miss the point. The children, the same thing. And with that thinking, we equate their needs with physical things only, instead of emotional or spiritual. Does that make sense? Okay. So what is the practice of pratyahara? There. So that's withdrawing from the enough, from the object, the look, the taste, the smell, withdrawing enough to allow yourself to relate to the deeper sense of things. So how do you do it? One of the ways is you slow down. It doesn't, we'll mistakenly think that this means to not care. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean not to care. Somebody will say, renounce your wife, and that'll be like the most extreme thing in yoga, and it'll sound like, what, I'm not supposed to care for her anymore? That's not what's being said. It's actually the opposite of it. It's really the opposite. What you care about now is how she looks, what she says, whether she does her duty, takes care of her responsibilities, takes care of the kids and all of that. And that's all the physical stuff. But to care deeply about someone's happiness, someone's satisfaction, someone's experience, someone's freedom is a deeper level of caring. And to the extent that we're able to detach the senses and the mind from the idea of things or the appearance of things in order to get to the essence of things, then that's really pratyahara. Attach, detach. Detach, attach. We hear the teaching of pratyahara and it sounds like don't care. It's not that. It's not that. Don't care about the appearance. Don't care about what is said. Don't let the reaction stuff take over. Learn to relate to the essence of things instead of the appearance of things. He says the same teachings of pratyahara appear in both Bhagavad Gita and the Yoga Sutras. The same thought is stated in both scriptures. One needs to withdraw the mind from the sense objects, which make the mind restless. You do not negate the sense objects. Rather, you free yourself from them so that the mind becomes still and quiet. Does that resonate in some way? What's shared? You do not negate it. You free your mind from it. How could you free your mind from a person that's upsetting? Who would like to speak to that? How could you free your mind from a person that is saying words that are upsetting?
With compassion, just the child within them is acting out, that's all.
By
Okay.
looking, by not seeing what is being said and even what it looks like, what I think it looks like, and being able to see deeper into the soul, the suffering of the soul that's there.
Okay. Hari?
Just, they don't take it personal. It just passes through.
Oh. So in none of those cases are we told to negate the object. There's a reality underlying the object, and if you negate the object, so we used to say, it's just Maya, but it's not. The appearance or the idea about it is Maya, but the essence of it is God.
Yes. We do observe.
Or forget God for a moment, your own self. Your own self, that you're not limited to this, that your own self is infinite and splayed out through this entire universe, and it is the essence of all. And so if you practice in a way, finally, that negates your own essence, then you still end up split. You still end up split. Cut off from yourself. You still end up cut off from yourself. Because the I here is every bit as real as the I here. The concept of I is different. But the reality, the essence here is the same as the essence here. The only issue is the mental stuff that is creating separation between I and I, between myself and myself. So it's a schism that is as if inside, not outside. And it is a schism, a split. that make sense? So during pilgrimage, for example, we were shown to accept all. Now, acceptance is not passive. Acceptance is not passive. By ignoring someone, you don't accept them. By negating them, you don't accept them. Does that make sense? And what we discovered was that someone is my own self. And so if I ignore them, if I ignore you, for example, I'm actually ignoring myself and I'm creating a schism, a split. For me to ignore you and not ignore myself, whatever I imagine myself to be, and whatever I imagine you to be, that's just ego stuff.
Yeah, it's not good.
Because there's no other.
Right.
Does that resonate? There's no other. So as soon as I choose to negate you and affirm me, which expression of ego is that?
Well, I'm trying to think of the Yoga Sutras, of the 4 modes of relating.
That's a practice. The practices ultimately are not truth. The practices are supporting the movement to truth.
But it does say ignore the wicked. Indifference towards the wicked.
Indifference.
Indifference.
Not ignorance.
Indifference towards what? Apply pratyahara to that now. Indifference towards what? Come on, answer the question. Indifference towards what? Towards the soul?
Towards the person.
As defined by? What is the person?
It's the mind. And
It's
body.
the thoughts
Manas.
and the words and the actions.
Right.
Correct?
Yeah.
So ignore them. Don't let them disturb you. That's what it's being said. Ignore their behaviors.
Right.
But are you to ignore the soul? Are you to deny it?
No.
No. Okay. So this is a meaning in that. So what that teaching is specifically focused on is cultivating satyam and the manas and the mind stuff. Oh. Okay. But real pratyahara is about setting aside. We'll go back to this again. Swami Premananda, if you want to enjoy the world, you have to treat it like a banana and peel the skin off, and then you can eat it, and then you can enjoy it. So that's a practice related to peeling the skin off. But that's what's wanted. Okay. So that's why he makes the point of saying don't negate. Okay. Here we'll complete. Do not negate the sense objects, rather you free yourself from them so that the mind becomes quiet and still. Something that you're attached to, okay, alcohol. When you're working with the addiction of alcohol or any addiction, what are you doing? Are you freeing yourself from it? Freeing your mind from it? Yeah. So there was a time when the smell of it would bring an action, bring forth a strong urge in manas. Yeah. Oh. And then after some time of practice, the smell does what?
Sets a compulsion. Go.
Yeah. So that's pratyahara. Yes? Also. You like girls, you like guys. Again, that's just a mental construct. Right? It's just a mental construct. It's just in the mind. It's the ragadvesha. I like this, I don't like that.
Choice.
And so you're not negating the girl or the guy. What you are negating is your attachment to it, your way of seeing it. Okay. We'll close here. Become their observer and reroute them, redirect them. The method of rerouting is pratyahara. Ahamkara, buddhi, chitta, and manas have been defined separately as 4 different functions of mind, but at one point they're also interconnected. Therefore, don't think that manas is totally isolated from ahamkara, ego, buddhi, intellect, or chitta, the memories, or that they don't mix and merge. The compartments are being created to facilitate understanding of a state of existence, life, and experience, but there is no clear division. The division can be identified only because of the functions of a particular quality of the greater mind. So we were talking about it's not an absolute. Oh, well, okay. Yeah, they do. They're coordinated. Thank you, Ray. Okay. Last, any question or comment?
I was just thinking about it in relationship to children and raising them, and how strong their will is to create an environment without harmony.
Yeah.
And how do you have peace in that? And is the problem that we, my wife and I, have attachment to peace and attachment to this style of raising them, and it's all attachment, and you just have to accept there's going to be disharmony?
Well, peace doesn't. There's an idea of peace and there's peace. Again, the idea of peace is in the mind, and that is related to the objects. So objects meaning the behavior of the kids, the behavior of the wife, what they say, how they say it. It's not peaceful. So it's disharmonious. That's an outer situation. Outer situations will come into harmony and go out of harmony. They just constantly ebb and flow like this. Sometimes it'll seem to be peaceful, sometimes it'll seem to be not peaceful, right? Less, more. It'll just continue to do this. You won't get your peace from that. Mm-hmm. As long as you're trying to get your peace there, it's just suffering because it's no way. The peace is inside. The real peace is inside. And the only way to be at peace is to be at peace undisturbed on the inside, whatever's happening outside. So let it ebb, let it flow, let the meteor come, let it stay away. Either way, to be at clarity inside. Peace is your own true nature. It's your own inner, deepest nature. And so what you're working with is, instead of trying to find it outside, you have to stop that because you can't find it outside. With the kids and such, you want to do your best to bring beneficial opportunities for them, for their development and such. But you can't change that there will be sometimes harmony, sometimes disharmony. It's the way it is here. Sometimes it seems peaceful in the world, sometimes it seems not peaceful in the world, right? In our particular stretch. But what doesn't change is the peace inside. And so for one wanting to be at peace, ultimately we have to see, I have to focus on the inner. And that requires this purification that we're talking about, this cleaning of the mind and our living situation and our expectations and our desires. If you have no expectations, no desires, then there's complete peace. So we have to learn what that means and how to navigate it. But that's true. If you have no expectations and no desires, there's complete peace. So part of the purification of our life is to really simplify our life in terms of our own mental relationships. The one who has a very complex life has great difficulty in getting to peace. It's the disturbance is on the inside, it's not on the outside. It's not what the kids do, it's your expectation about what the kids should do.
But if they want a show, we either give them a show and give in and have disharmony because we gave in and it's not beneficial for them long term, or we fight with them, argue. And it's not just the one show. One show leads to
Well,
100 shows.
go back to have developed clarity on what's beneficial as it relates to them. And some things you're willing to fight for, and some things you're not. But it seems that it's worth fighting for something that is really beneficial for someone. Not yourself so much, but beneficial for the kids. Not money, not pleasure, but the ability to make good decisions for themselves. You know the story, if you want to help someone who's hungry, then you don't just feed them, you help them to grow food. And if you want to help a child in the development, you help them to make good decisions that will lead them to a happy life, into a peaceful life in the future. And some things are worth taking a stand on, and some things not so much, right? And so, but we know that the child mind is imprinted. Violence, sex, all of this, we know that the more it's available, the more it gets imprinted. And so there also need to be discussions about what's beneficial, what's not, why is it beneficial, why is it not beneficial, to their ability to sit down and have conversations as well. This needs to happen.
But if we had the clarity you talked about, that keeps us on that piece.
Well, and the situation that you're placed in is to help you to have that clarity. This world is, from one perspective, a very messy world. Opportunities look like messes. But also you get feedback in this world. You can find out if something's beneficial or not beneficial, if something's working and leading towards peace, or not working and leading towards ashanti, less peace. So, and you have to have that. We can't expect that we're given a textbook and we just follow the textbook, step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. Our mind doesn't work that way. We're here to experiment, to explore, to learn about life. And then finally, the motivation is to freedom. And finally, what is this freedom? But it's very much an iterative process, isn't it? I do something, you do something. You do something, I do something. We're all interrelated in this. And with the kids as well. So you're learning, you have to learn. And same with them. They're in that place of developing the intellect, developing the power of choice. And they really need, they won't tell you, Dad, help me learn how to choose right from wrong. They won't tell you that. They won't come to you and say that. But this is actually what they're saying. And they'll get caught up and they'll fight to defend what you know to be not beneficial. So that's how they learn. Sorry?
How we learn also.
How we learn also. Ram Dass quote, beautiful quote, we're all just walking each other home. So, but if you put their welfare first, their welfare ahead of your welfare, and this is also, in the householder environment, this is the opportunity that you're given. You put your wife's welfare ahead of yours, your children's welfare ahead of yours, then you actually come into what's beneficial for you that way. You know, when we put karma yoga concept, when we put the other's benefit ahead of ours, genuinely so, and we set our benefit aside and we really do what is benefit, not what we imagine is beneficial for the other, not what we would want ourselves, but where we really listen and ask and observe and learn and do, then we lose ourselves. And of course, the real karma yoga is about putting God the highest, that reality, the essence of all, first. Okay, we should close. Final prayers in RT.
There's a question online.
Oh yes, what is the question?
So negating something creates the separation or creates separation?
In a way, it's negating yourself. So, what's another example? There's a car. You call it your car. It's not really your car. It's never been your car. But there's a car, and you use the car to drive to and from in order to do your service. And so there's an attached view of the car and there's a detached view of the car. There's an attached place where that car owns you because it's my car and I worked hard in order to get this car and I need it to look a certain way and to be a certain way because it reflects me as the owner of the car, and I'm tired of this car, I want a better car. All of this stuff is in attachment, right? This is the car that I'm responsible for caring for. This is the Lord's car. And it's given to me that I may serve the Lord. And through grace, I can travel from here to the library and offer a yoga class and then get back in and come back. It's not my car, but what is my responsibility related to the car? I have to make sure that there's gas in it. I have to keep it clean. Why do I keep it clean? Is it because it's mine? No, it's because it's the Lord's car and I wish to serve. And so I need to keep it clean. I need to keep it orderly. I need to keep oil in it. Why? Because it'll break down if I don't put oil in it. Yes. Detached view. In neither case are you negating car. If you negate car, you do so at your own peril because you won't have a car to use. And in a deeper sense, if you negate car, you're negating an aspect of the whole. What is the car made of, Hari?
Same thing.
Say it.
Brahman.
Brahman, God. And Brahman, Atman and Brahman are different or the same?
Same.
The car is my own self. So if you negate the car, you do it at your own peril. It's not really a car. It's never been a car. It appears to be. So what's your problem with it?
Oh, Swamiji, is it like you're negating your assumed assumption of how you think the car is?
Well, you want to negate that. You
Yes,
want to
that's
negate
the
that.
assumption.
That you want to negate. That you want to be clear of is your own idea of what it is. But still, it's just, in one way, it's just practical. Because it's a car, it's going to get you to and from work. Okay, just this, see if this helps. So in the attached view of cars, every car you see, you will test drive in your mind.
Right.
And okay, so don't say car, say girl or say guy. In the attached view of a girl or a guy, every girl you see, you will test drive. Or every guy you see, you'll imagine yourself with them. Mm-hmm. And what would it be with them? Either as a friend or a wife or a husband, because you're having troubles with your own right now, and you're out back in the market checking out the dealerships and seeing what might be good. Huh? But even when you're not actively looking in the dealership with an attached view towards personages, then every single one of them in the manas is being evaluated based upon how they look, what they say, how they smell, what they might be like to be with. That's the attached view. So you're to detach. Take the mind out of that. So, and if you do it in this way, if you say, that's a girl, and just be done with it, then that would be helpful. And you see, that's a state of detachment. So you haven't negated the girl, have you? And now let's say at a deeper level that you say, that's a soul. Have you negated her? And at a deeper level you say, or experience, that's my own self. You don't experience any separation whatsoever. Have you negated her?
No.
You only negated the idea of separation, is that correct? But now she, as what she is still there, not different from you. Right? So this is what's being discussed. So it's the idea of, it's the relationship with, that's, but you're not negating the person itself. In a way, you're affirming it, but not as a separate, not as something that you own, not as something that you could own, not as something that you test drive, not as something that you have superiority over, not as something that you have inferiority to. Is that okay? And whoever asked the question, you'll tell me whether that's beneficial or not. Okay, short arati. And so ultimately you negate otherness. And you allow for existence absolute. In every form. That's where it gets, that's the Vedanta, etc. But Vedanta doesn't say that the forms have no reality. It says they are not as they appear to be. And we go through a beautiful exploration of what they really are, and we always get to the Brahman. But you remember Gopala would sit here and I would say, what is that? And he would go right to Brahman, but he didn't have a clue what that meant. Right? And so you can't just play the word association game. To be in union, it's really being in union with the essence, which is the all, the each and the all, the each and the all. So it's just a matter of not seeing properly. Okay, page 174. Om Chayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mrityur Mokshiyamam Mritat. Om Chayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mrityur Mokshiyamam Mritat. Om Chayambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim Pushtivardhanam Orvai Rukameva Bandhanan Mrityur Mokshiyamam Mritat. Om Shānti Shānti Shāntihi. Below Sakura Shivananda Maharaji ki, for all the saints and sages of all the traditions. Okay, let's rise for Arati.